Yeah, good morning, everyone. Hope I'm audible and everyone could see my screen here. Uh, Guys, am I audible and you could see my screen? Yeah, okay. Okay, so where are we, guys? What are we discussing? I think the last practical thing what we have implemented is creating this Netflix project. So we could able to use the wide bundle tool and using which we could able to create this Netflix page, right? Let me open the source code. So this is how I'm importing the complete folder. Okay. So when we go to like earlier yesterday we were discussing, right? The main file, what it will go as index.html. Under the index.html, main.jx is the one which is included, implies this is the very first one which is going to come, under which we are saying that root is the one, or like comment. If you remember, two things we need to do before we inject the React into your, I mean, before creating a React project or within the React project. The very first thing is I need to specify what is the root element under which the React has to be loaded, right? So that is what I'm going to specify in the main.js and sorry, main.jsx, and we'll even talk about like what is strict mode, etc. and all. It is an optional actually. Either you can keep the strict mode or we don't need to keep the strict mode. And when we load this main.jsx, that itself is having app.jsx. App.jsx is like, if you see, this is one of the component what we are trying to include into this main. And what actually the app.jsx is, this is the actual load of the application. I mean, actually, one of the component is getting injected into this. App.jsx is very simple. It is one of the parent component, okay, which is going to return parent component, which is going to have its own fragment and which will be rendered on the page. Okay, so that is how the flow goes. I mean, yesterday people were asking. So first thing is index.html, following with the main.jsx, following with the app.jsx. And under the app.jsx, what we have done, I mean, this is one of the page now. The complete page will be under this app.jsx. Now, what actually this guy is going to do, first thing we have created is a container. And second thing is two components we have created, separate components. One is the page header component and one is the page content component. So everything is part of the components here, right? And what is this page header? We created a separate folder called components. Under that, every component we are going to create a folder name. I have seen some communication happening. Is it is mandatory that I mean, within our Telegram chat, is it is mandatory that the component name should be the same folder name? It is recommended, but it is not mandatory. Okay, it is never saying that the component name, if I see ABC, under that I'm going to create a component called as PQR. Doesn't matter for us, it works. Because it is, I mean, it's just a path what we are going to specify. This name also, right? I gave the component JSX name as page component or JSX. Is it is mandatory? No, you can give the some different name also. Just to make it so clear, now if you see under the component, there is something called as a page component, and the dedicated files what it having is JSX and the CSS. Now you say, no, I'm going to create one simple folder. Under that, I'll move all the component, all the CSS into one folder. Not at all a problem. Your React is not at all asking for that mandatory folder structure. Okay, this is we have given that. That's it. I mean, it is recommended to have it, but it's up to we to make it more simpler, to make it more understanding for the developer. We just follow this, but are not mandatory. For my side, I mean, this is what the rule we generally follow in the real time. Component name, component CSS file, component JSX file, we keep the same to make it relevant. Okay. That is what we do. Difference between index.html and app.jsx. Again, right, Vaishnavi, try to understand this. As I said, initially, the page what actually gets loaded is index.html. Under that, main.jsx. This is like a main file which is going to have it holds the content to content which tells React that what DOM element, what root element has to be injected for virtual DOM. Okay, so this is the point which we have already discussed. In the React, the very first thing we need to say is what is the root element. We need to say that, okay, this is the div guy, this is the body guy, this is the element on which the uh, I mean, we need to mention that, okay, this is the place where the React has to come into the picture and it has to take care of it, or it has to make it as a virtual DOM so and so, isn't it? So that where is that piece of code we are adding? Like, and what is the method we will be using? So React dot create root element, etc. Right? So those things, sorry, React DOM dot. So those things will be part of your main.js. You see, like a create root element is the method, and where this create root is coming, it is coming from the React DOM. Earlier, if it is a standalone application and where we were not using the import, we were using the direct React there, isn't it? So there we were using like what do you say? React DOM, etc. You know, either I can say this in general. Earlier, what we have done is we have seen something called as import, say something called as React DOM from React DOM, and we used to say React DOM dot create root. Under that, we used to specify so and so, isn't it? This is what we used to do earlier. But now what I'm doing, I'm directly taking the create root method. Okay, I don't need to say, I don't need to go with the parent object. I'm directly saying create root itself. That is the reason I'm saying create root instead of React DOM dot create root. Hope I'm clear. Okay, so that is how we are going to import this create root, and we are going to specify what is the piece of DOM, piece of root element for which the React has to get rendered. Okay, if you are still not clear, we can go with what actually we have done earlier. I think on when we have gone for that. These are like JavaScript content, right? Yeah, I mean, if you remember, like we discussed that React Web App. This is also an application what we created. No. Okay, so if you remember, like we have taken the steps like how to inject React to the existing application. So that is where we have gone with. Okay, so now let me save this. So this is your index.html, another main.js. Now under the main.jsx, we are going to import app.jsx. Okay, so what this guy holds the initial, or we say the parent component of current application or project, you can say. Okay, so this is how the flow goes. Any questions? I think Vaishnavi, you asked this question. Hope I'm clear, ma'am. Swain, there is nothing in index.html till now. If you see this, this is what we have under index.html. We are not going to write anything. I mean, this is the defaulting what we got created. We are including that div element, which is the parent element, on which we are going to add every other piece of code. And it is even included that type is equal to module with main.jsx. So why the type is equal to module? The reason is we are going to make use of the import keyword under the main.jsx that we have already discussed, right? So we are going to import the external JavaScript files into this. If you go into the main.jsx, we are using the import keyword. That is the reason it has been included as a module. And again, as I said you, no, I don't want to make it as a JSX file. Keep it as a .js file. Doesn't make any difference. We discussed that any file, the file under which the JSX which is being added or being written, that can be either a .js file or a .jsx file or TS file or TSX file. Okay. Hope it is clear. Next. So once explain starting onwards. Starting onwards, you want me to start with from the very demo everything? Okay, for today you are saying. So today I was just revising what we have discussed today. Vaishnavi, please explain it one bit. I'm not able to understand. Can you tell me what specific point you're not clear, Vaishnavi? Earlier you mentioned that you're not getting the difference between the .html, index.html and the main.jsx. Is this still a question for you? Jitendra, can you please explain import statement syntax? I confuse every time. That is where you need to be clear with the JavaScript features, Jitendra. That's fine. So what we have to do is import is one of the predefined keyword. What is the main intention of going with this import keyword? Okay, what is the import and export part, which is part of your plain JavaScript? Import is used to, export is using export, we make the resource to be available for getting imported. Okay, any piece of method, object, class, variables, anything, whatever we declare, okay, we say something called as export variable a is equal to something called as 90. This can be importable to the other page. Export function uh, sample. So again, this is can be exportable can be importable here. In the same way, export, say some class A, B, C. Like this, you can define any piece of code. This is about your import keyword. Now, what do you mean, export keyword. And what do you mean by import? Using which we could retrieve or we could include or refer any 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 method or variable or object, etc., to a file. Okay, so any of this guy, either it can be imported by using this import keyword. So using import, we could able to import the exported variables only, not any other part. Jitendra, hope you're clear. And the syntax is, you already know this, we say import. Okay, if you put into flower brace, that indicates that what all the values. I say some a comma sample comma abc from say some test dot or from test dot jsx or dot js, whatever it is, we are done with this. This is how you're going to import. If it is a default one, okay, I said like export default count equal to say some 10. Now, if at all you have to import this guy, you can see import, or else within the same import we can do, or else you can do in the as a separate one also. I say count comma so and so. Why the count guy is outside? Because count is the default one which has come from the file, and we knew it that like on a single file there can be only one default. Okay, any more questions, guys? Sorry, Rajan, Jitendra, you mentioned that. Hope you're clear with this question now. Rajeshri, in main.jsx only we import app component or other component also. Okay, why the reason I'm going with main.jsx? Main.jsx is the very first one which has been which is actually been part of your index.html. Now under your main.js, if you say I am going to say something called as a app as the parent one, so that under that I'll be giving multiple components. No, I would like to go with other component. It's up to you. Now I say a function. something called as hello. You see what actually this guy is doing? So he's just returning a fragment. Now, if at all you have to use this guy, I say something called as hello as a component like this. You can make it, right? So either you can import existing external components or okay, either you can create your own component or you can import any other component. But I want to make it so clear. I want to make this the code so clean that in the main.jsx, the only thing what you're going to do is importing the main component, which is app. Under the main, I start doing every other part. Did that answer your question, ma'am, Rajshri? Vaishnavi, you missed 3 to 4 lectures. I mean, maybe like we can discuss on that. I mean, you just message me directly in Telegram, Vaishnavi. We'll see like how I can revise those things because for others, like it'll be like repetitive stuff for them. Okay. Rohita, please take doubt later, sir. Yeah, I know that it is. Is everyone fine now? We can go forward. Okay. So coming back to this guy, this is what the components we have created. Where is that? And now everyone is so clear. The advantage, what you see, if you go into your app.jsx, which is again part of your main.jsx, you see like I have included the page header component and page content component. What is the advantage that we are getting by making it as components? The advantage is if you want this component for any number of times or any place you wanted, you can just import it by using just the fragment. Isn't it? That is what the component advantage is, right? So the main advantage is you will be getting benefited of using it for any number of times, wherever you wanted it. Okay, and there is a concept of lazy loading or pure components concept we have, where uh, only one time we are going to instantiate. Now, you may ask me a question, say, for example, when I'm using this component, so do you think that the component method is getting executed for the first time? It is. But now for the second time, you're using the same components with the same parameter. The beautiness of this component in your React is it doesn't include all, it doesn't invoke all the methods once again. Whatever the response got created earlier, I just make use of the same thing being getting rendered in the second place wherever you use. So that's the advantage we have. Okay, anyway, we'll discuss about the types of component, what is pure component, etc. etc. things. We'll discuss on that. Ravi Kumar, portfolio. Yeah, I mean that I discussed that I'll be showing you how do we create a portfolio and what you can say, how you could able to deploy that, right? So we'll discuss on that later. I mean, first of all, let's get understanding of how do we create this Netflix component. Then we'll go with that. Okay. Okay. So the other part, what we have is this is the component. Now we are trying to make this background image as a transparent, right? So how we have added this image. First thing, when I go to assets, under that we have some images. Okay. And under that index.css, we have not added anything. Page content.css, no. And app.css, we are adding image, background image like this. But this background image doesn't work for this guy because like we can't, the image itself is already added as a background. So instead of that, what we go for is, now I removed this guy. So if we remove this, this is how it is background. But why the reason this color has been given? I don't want to have this color. Okay, so this is how the page is. Now, how you're going to keep the background for this? Let's go into the app.jsx under the page container. No, it can be added in main.jsx itself. Okay, I say img src is, so here I can import that image. Import page background from /so and so. Okay, in general, we keep all the static resources under the assets folder. Okay, like the images, the CSS files. Those things will be moving into the assets folder. Okay. So from that assets, this is how I'm importing this guy. And I can simply say here it has to be evaluated. So I'm going to keep it as an expression. Okay, so that like it will be evaluating this piece of art and it's going to inject the path of the image into the SRC path or SRC attribute. Or else we can't say attribute here, we'll say property. Okay, let us save this, come back. This is how it is coming. Now you're getting this image. At the bottom, you're going to have this Netflix because this is coming to the next. But this guy has to be on the top of this image. Okay, the app guy. So when I go into this app.css, where is your app.jsx? So under this is a page which is coming, right? Class container. Oh, I can go for class name container. We are actually making use of the bootstrap part. Uh, okay. I can say another div. This is all the pure HTML and CSS, guys. I'm just trying to change this guy. Okay, I'm keeping another fragment, another parent here. Uh, I'll say some class name. Class cannot be used here. Class name is the attribute what we have to use. Even if you use class also, it will work, but it is going to throw me a warning message. So class name is page app. And it is having its own CSS. I'm working on app.jsx. So app.css is there. Now I say page app. I say position is absolute. I'll say top of. Okay, so this is how I have added now. Now I have the background image on the top. I have this logo. Again, it come back to the same original position. But now what I have to do is this guy background image. The reason why we made it as img tag is could able to add it as a transparency. Now under your main.jsx. So if it is main.jsx, I don't have the specific CSS, or we can use the index.css file, but I'll say some class name. Class name is main app. Main app. Main app page background. Okay, under your index.css, or else I can even go with the. Okay, let's define this anyway. We are not defining anything here. So I say this guy as opacity, something called as 0.3. Okay, now you could able to see the opacity is coming on the top of this. Let me make it something called as 0.6. Okay, this is how it is. Now on the top, what else we wanted? So Netflix is coming like this. Index.js is gone, main is gone. App.jsx, I say 15 pixel. Okay, so this is how it is. So this is now we have the transparency only to the parent background parent container, not to the content child container. Okay, now I see the questions. But the September notes is missing. I will have a check on that, Ravi. Okay, Ashutosh, can we add another class called background image in that class? Yeah, whatever it is. Now we can go with Color RGBA. Obviously, we can go for that, Ashutosh. Whatever the CSS wise, right? Obviously, you can show your skills. You can add the beautification, whatever the way you want it. We can still go for that. Okay, I'm just showing the functionality, how you're going to add this, how you're going to make this component-based project. Okay, that's what we are looking for. Now, on the top, and again, in the last class, we have even discussed about how do we include the Bootstrap into your application, isn't it? So we were using the import keyword and we were installing the Bootstrap, and this is how we have installed, we have injected this. Okay, and another thing is we need to even include the Bootstrap CSS. And if you see, when I'm including this Bootstrap guy into app.jsx, that is indicating that the Bootstrap has to be supported in the complete project. Okay. I say something called as import Bootstrap. Under that, the dist folder bundle.mini.js. Okay. Why the reason you're including the bundle.mini.js? There is some functionality of the bootstrap.js. Now, if you save this guy, come back here and reload page. Okay. So now you see earlier the dropdown was not working. Okay. If I remove this part, okay, because this is the component what we are using from the bootstrap itself, bootstrap dropdown component. You see, when I'm clicking on this, it is not getting open. Why so? Bootstrap has just added its own look and feel. That's it. Now, when I go with the page header component, you see what we are doing is we were using this bootstrap like div under this. Where is this? Yeah. So this is the component which we are using from the bootstrap, who is going to create the dropdown for us. Now, when I'm creating the dropdown using the bootstrap things, obviously functionality also has to be added. If it is like a simple button, you see here I'm using this button. In order to add this, I don't need to include the bootstrap functionality, isn't it? Only for adding the look and feel changes, we just having the CSS will be more than enough. But if we have to include the functionality for this, then we need to include the bootstrap mini.js, bundle.js. That will be injecting the functionality also. You see, now earlier it was not working with the drop down, but now if I click on this, it started working. What need to be done on click of this, we'll see later. Okay. Okay, so Manoj, you share this. So this is the one you have created, Manoj? Manoj, like you have created and you have deployed, right? Okay, that's good. Okay, so that is what we are about to create or the same. The next thing is let's go with okay, so the next bit, the next part, what we have is where is the drop down? To remove the drop down earlier, it was there, right? That is how we have added the languages. Netflix drop down. Okay, might be in UK. This is how it is getting shown. Maybe in India, it will be showing the languages. But yeah, here it is straightforward English. Okay, so let me add this piece of text here. Now you see, we already divided this, right? This is the title and the button what we have, which is the header component. And we have the middle component, something like this. I'll take it as two components. One is the title with all the message, price value which is shown. And the second component under the main itself, which is holding the text box and your button. Okay, so how you're going to do that? So for that, so this is the page content what we have created, right? Where is the page content? So this is the page content. Now what actually it is been shown? This is saying something like this. Content. Okay, and how this page content text is going to come. See, I mean, I can put the class either in main.jsx, wherever you want, you can keep it. But my expectation is when I'm using this in the separate one of the component, so try to put this class as also into the same components. Okay. Say something on this. At the same time, I need to specify the width also so that it will be falling on the same line. Say something called as 3.5. Okay, and I'm going to specify the width as the percentage. Okay, this is how it is, and it is text lines in the. This is how it is coming to the center horizontally, and under that we still have the dark map. Under the dark background, this is coming on the top. We will still do that. Okay, not just only the opacity is going to work. We need to add another layer on the top of this with background, so that like on the top we can add the content. We'll go for that. Okay, so the next part what we have is starts at so and so. Let me add this piece of content. Last name, I say line. This is how it is. And the next part is I'm going to put the search bar. So for the search bar, shall I go with a separate component here? Better, right? But under the page content, it has to be. So if we say this is the page content, under this, we need to go with the search bar. So I can go with, or else it is having only two static content, right? Let's keep the search bar also over here itself. Okay, I'll say the fragment. Under this, I say the div. Under that, I say some. This is how the search bar is. Get started. This is btn hyphen LG. Okay, so you see, like under the one single page, we have created the header component, we have created the main component. Under that, we have this button part. If you want to have the space, placeholder in email class name. This is page content.css. This guy. This is how the search bar is. And the next part is the movie list content, which is having something called as a slideshow. Okay. Can go is under app.asx. So we can say something called as movie list content or movie slider, we can say. Okay, so this is how it is. Now, how this movie slider is going to come. So this movie slider, how you're going to create a component? Very simple. Let's go with the components folder. You see a new folder. I say this is movie slider. Okay, it is a folder. Under that, I'm going to create a new file, which is movie slider.jsx. Okay, under that, we are going to create a new file, which is movie slider.css. Okay, this is your JSX and this is your CSS. Now, under your JSX, what we are going to do, we are going to get a component, right? Function. I'll say export this function. I'll say movie slider. Okay, so this is how I'm going to create a simple component. Now, how, if at all I have to make use of this movie component, which we have all, sorry, movie slider, this is the one what I have added. Let us come back and reload the page. Something is the issue. What happened? It says that movie slider is not at all defined in app.jsx. Why the reason? You are making use of it, but you have missed to use the import, right? I have to say import. What is the module name? It is movie slider from so and so. Movie slider. Okay, why it is still throwing an issue? Import. Okay, why it is still use this? Import can only be used in TypeScript files. Obviously, we can make use, but the thing is, this movie slider. Oh, why the reason I'm using it for multiple times? It's already done at line number 9. Okay, save this guy and reload the page. Now you see, this is the, where is this? You see, movie slider component is coming into the picture. Okay, now under this, now we need to add multiple sliders. If at all you want to go for, we can just make use of it. Okay, I have a question from Sudhakar. In each guys, when you're putting the question, right, put it to everyone so that everyone understands what actually the question or what the explanation I'm giving for. So your question is, in each component folder, .jsx file and CSS file are side by side. Okay, I mean side by side in the sense one folder contains its corresponding JSX file, its corresponding CSS file. Okay, those CSS files are applying the CSS to our component. Then to what index.css applying CSS to? Okay, that's a good question. Now what he's saying is you have the parent level, which is your index.css. If you see, there are 3 level of CSS what we have added. Okay, when I come to the CSS, 3 levels of CSS, which is, I mean, 3 locations we see the CSS. One thing is under assets folder, there is something called as app dot. Okay, it's not on the assets folder. We have added it at app level. under app.jsx level, we have something called as app.css. And there is index.html level, we have added uh, at index.html level, we have something called as index.css. And the third thing is component level, we have added component.css. Okay, three places we have added. Now you say, I will give this app.css. Why so? Under your app.jsx level. Okay, I'm saying that, okay, this is the JSX, which is a component again, right? If you see, this is a component. App is a component. Now, for that, corresponding CSS has to be there. That's what I have added under the app.css. Now, I have go for this movie slider.css. Why I have added? Because for this movie slider dot component, I'm going to add the CSS. Now, if there is something in the index.html itself, okay, when there is something called as CSS under your, what do you say, index.html or under your main.jsx, that is where we will be using the index.css. You see, under your main.jsx, I have added this. Now, if you ask me a question, main.jsx, is it is a component? No. If you see, it is not a component. This is the place where you're going to mention that the starting of the component. That is the reason in general, people make it as main.js file, not as JSX, because that is not a component. Okay. But again, as I said here, like, I mean, we have not created it. White builder is the one who has created this folder structure for us. So that is how you're just making use of it. But in general, you can make it as just a main.js. Now, okay, if you still feel a confusion, let us make it as main.js. Okay, if that is the case, how you're importing this guy under your index.html, I simply say main.js. Now you don't have a confusion. So now if you see main.js, it is a simple external JavaScript file, which is using even the index.css as an import. Now index.css is the parent level. Okay, hope I answered your question, Sudhakar. Okay, next. So another part now. Okay, let us add this. What happened here? Fail to parse source import analysis because the content contains invalid JSX. Make sure it name file. Come on, why it is JSX? Do we have any format we are following here? Okay, this part. You see, I'm using something called as render method, for which I'm passing this piece of uh, what do you say, fragment or HTML markup, we can say. So when I'm passing this, this is in general, in JavaScript, it is not at all possible. That is the reason they have made it as a JSX. Okay, so then there's a reason for this. Let's make it as rename as JSX. Okay, if that is the JSX, then in our index.html, it will be JSX. Okay, so hope you're understanding why the reason it's not JSX, why the reason it is JS and all. I mean, anytime we have this fragment type of stuff, that is where we go with the JSX, so that it will understand that. Otherwise, like if you see, right, it is straightforward. In JavaScript, can I write such type of things like return this part? No, right? I mean, JavaScript doesn't understand this, what actually it is. That is the reason it is recommending to go with the JSX. Okay, please explain the main.jsx again. I'll come to that, Ravi. Rashri, as we are using three labels for CSS, is there change of getting overridden all CSS in the runtime? That is where we have to make sure. I mean, one advantage what we have is, for example, if you're going with the parent, okay, that's a good question. What is saying is, for example, in the parent, I say something called as main block. In the child, you are using another class called as main block. In the subchild, we are again another using something called as main block class. Okay, in all the three places, you're using the main block. Now, if you're using this, is it not going to override this? So how you're going to stop it? One advantage, one thing what we can take care is by giving the unique CSS content. because when the parent will come, later child will come, later this guy will come. The advantage is child is the one which is going to come in later. That guy always takes the priority. What if like I want to take only from the main block? We know that in your CSS by using exclamatory mark important is the way you're going to override it, or else the other way is you make sure you're going to define it under the what do you say under the give some unique name for the components instead of making it as a common class. Okay, so how you're going to make it, or else other best way what we generally do in our real time is, for example, this is movie slider.css. I'm going to make you something called as .abc. Okay, this is how I'm going to define. Now my question is, if someone else also make use of the ABC, okay, then what is how we are going to solve it? At the same time, .abc dot simple something like this. Okay, this is what I have. Now my expectation is I want to make this guy to, I mean, the sample and ABC has to be included into the other page. Now how you're going to do that? I mean, in other component also there is a chance like ABC will be defined and sample will be defined. Now what I do is for this I say dot movie slider is one of the parent component I'm going to define. Okay, and whatever the subcomponents I'm defining, let's make it inside this. Okay, you know this, right? This is a CSS3 based. I'm defining a parent. Now maybe in the parent I say some border 2 pixel solid green. Okay, this is what I'm defining for the movie slider. Under that, I'll be having the ABC class. Under that, there is a sample class. Now, someone else will define ABC. That is different completely. Now, what I will do is, where is my movie slider? You see, this is how I say class name is equal to like this. Done. This is how I'm protecting the I'm protecting that our own class files or CSS class files are not getting disturbed by the I mean, you can make use of the same class name within multiple components. Okay, so it is not at all going to get a clash for us. Hope I'm clear with your question, Ashley. Next, do component always starts with a capital letter? I'm not understanding this. So that is again the problem, Vaishnavi. I mean, we already discussed something called the rules and regulations what we have. Okay, what are the rules we have to create a component? That is where if you just revise that class, right, then you'll be understanding better. But I mean, that's like a lengthier class where we are defining all the rules here. Please go through with that. I know that you have joined a bit late, but yeah, it is where it is. You can ask Shubham. He can help us in sharing your videos. And again, I'm telling everyone, if you want any questions, please put it directly to everyone. So everyone will understand the question what is in. Sudhakar, we are applying different CSS to app itself and different CSS to each component itself. That is why that CSS overloading question arose. Exactly, Ryan. So that is what the question he has. Because we are not writing in general. When you go with the development of a web application, what we do, we define the CSS as main.css, isn't it? I mean, so that like every other CSS related to that component will be moving into the main.css file. But here we are not doing that. We are creating n number of CSS, 100 components you have, 100 CSS file also it is recommended. Then if that is the case, how the override is going to come? One component might use the same one which I have used in the other part or other component also. Okay, yeah. Okay, now the next part is, so sliders we are going to add in the same way. We have this more reasons to join. Okay, slider, we are going to add it later under our, where is that? App.js6. I say more reasons. Okay, more reasons is the component name what I have added. And how this more reasons is, So under the components, you're going to create a new folder. I say something called as new folder, more reasons. Under more reasons, new file, JSX. JSX file. Okay. So now I say here, what is this guy? A function. Okay. This is how the more reasons component is going to come. And this guy has to be exported. Then only that can be imported. And imported under app.jsx. Okay, you see, more reasons is the one. And how you're going to import this, import. And again, why the reason you're putting this preset? Let's make it as default. Either the slider guy or the more reasons guy. Where is that? This is export default. Okay. So, so if we make it as a default, I can directly make use of these two here. So now if I reload this, you see my movie slider component is ready and the more reasons component is also ready. We can start working on adding the beautification for this. So this guy is coming with some tiles. So you can go with Bootstrap. I go with card. There is something called as cards in Bootstrap. You see, this is a card. So this is how you can create a card which is having some image and content. So here we have only the content. At the very bottom, we have this image. Okay. So how we are going to add that? Let's see what all the other components we have. Image. Okay. I think the first one itself is matching, where we keep the image at the bottom and we have this card title. That's a title, content, and so and so. Now, how do we go for this guy? So let's copy its HTML. Yeah, this image tag has to be closed. Right now, I'm not going to put this image. I'll just make it only the simple card. So we have this card body. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look on this. Back and reload some issue. What is that? The style property existing in mapping invalid DOM property name. You see here, class cannot be used. We'll replace the class with class name. Okay, save this. Okay. Invalid class name under page header.js6. But there is a warning, right? Where is the page header.js6? Okay, so here also we were using the bootstrap. Okay, so there is something called as the style property expectation mapping. Okay, are we using the style property here? Not on this. More reason. We are not. Okay, here is the one. You see here, style is the attribute what has been used by the bootstrap component. But again, style is an attribute which we cannot make use. Anytime we want to make use of the CSS, if at all you have to make it using your style, we say something called a style, and this is how the object, it has to be in the form of key and value pairs. Okay, you see, style is the expression what we are giving. Under that, we are giving an object